Welcome to lesson 20, and in this lesson I will show you how to calculate a worker or an employee's gross wage and net wage, how to bring into the calculation all the deductions, and also where you need to state or indicate your taxable income. Remember, in lesson 20 we did the theoretical part. We looked at all the deductions that you could have, and we looked at the general terminology and also the recording, and this is then only a very comprehensive exercise. We can quickly read through this exercise and then we can start to do the calculations. Now, in this exercise, James is our employee or worker, and he receives a housing allowance. Remember, a housing allowance is one of those allowances that a person can get. Sometimes it's in the form of cash. For James, it was in the form of cash, but it can also be that you can stay in your employer's house. But in this exercise, it was in the form of cash or $500 per week. Then his normal hourly rate is $50 per hour, and there it gives us all the hours that he worked throughout the week. Overtime is paid at 1.5 times the normal rate, except for Sundays and public holidays when it is paid at twice the normal rate. So you will see there's a Saturday and there's a Sunday. So Saturday should be, if it's outside normal hours, then this one would be 1.5, while Sunday would be twice the normal rate. Then there's a pension fund contribution. The employer pays 7.5% and the employee also pays 7.5%. Then there's a medical aid also. The employer pays $230 million and the employee also contribute $230 million. And then there's a pay-as-you-earn payee, or their normal income tax or employee tax is 23% of taxable income. Now, this is really important. Where in your calculation will you show taxable income? Because your income tax is calculated on the taxable income. But we will do all of this in great detail. Then we have an unemployment insurance fund, a UIF. Now in Namibia we talk about Social Security Commission, where the employer contributes 1% and the employee also 1% of the very important basic wage. Your basic wage will be that normal per hour rate. It will not include your overtime or any allowances. Now, first of all, we can see now we have a normal hourly rate. We have overtime for a normal overtime rate of 1.5. We also have a Sunday overtime rate of twice the normal rate. So first of all, we need to consider the number of hours at normal rate, the number of hours at 1.5 times, and then the number of hours at twice the rate. That will be our starting point. Now, if I look at the information, I can see there's a Monday 8 hours, Tuesday 8 hours, Wednesday 11. So there I can see there's a bit of normal overtime. Thursday 8 hours, Friday 9 hours, there's again normal overtime. Saturday 6 hours, but then they tell us this is normal hours, and then Sunday 5 hours. So first, we will calculate the normal hours. So we will say on Monday, we had 8 normal hours. On Tuesday, we had 8 normal hours. On Wednesday, remember, we had 11 hours, but only 8 can be normal hours because a day is usually 8 hours. So on Wednesday, we have 8 normal hours. On Thursday, we have again 8 hours. On Friday, we had 9 hours, but remember, only 8 hours can be normal hours. So I will put down 8 hours for Friday. And then on Saturday, they told us that this Saturday 6 hours is normal hours. So I have another 6. So if I add this up, we can quickly do this calculation, and then you will get to 46 hours. So our normal hours are then 46. So I will only say NH normal hours. All right, now let's look at the 1.5 times hours. So on Wednesday, I see, or I can notice there that it's 11 hours, 8 hours of those were normal hours, so 3 hours will be paid at 1.5 times. On Thursday, it was only 8 hours. On Friday, I had 1 hour at 1.5. On Saturday, I had none. And Sunday will be the double time. All right, so how many hours do I have? I have 4 hours at 1.5. Okay, and then how many hours do I have at double pay? I have on Sunday, I have 5 hours, and that will be double pay. So 5, so in total it will be 5 hours at twice the pay. So we calculated the normal hours, also the normal overtime, and then the Sunday overtime. So we can now actually start with to fill in our sheet, or we can basically call this sort of a pay slip. And why do we do this? This is to calculate our net wage at the end then. All right, so I have one column where I will show the details. Then in my second column, I will show the hours, because this person is paid per hour, so it's very important to show the hours to do the calculation. And then the rate per hour in this column. And then I have 2 columns to show the amount. Now, in the first amount column, I will show the deductions. And then in the second amount column, I will show all the pluses or all my income. All right, so let's start. We calculated there were 46 hours at $50, and that will give me then 2,300. Remember, this is the income, so I will use the last column. Then I have a normal overtime at 1.5 times. Now remember, 50 times 1.5 will give you 75. Now 4 hours times 75 equals then 300. So I will write it in my last column. Then on Sunday, you worked overtime of 5 hours. And remember, for overtime on Sundays, it's paid at double the normal wage. So it's 50 times 2, 100. For 5 hours will give you then 500. All right, so this is all my wages per hour. And then also, just to come back, there was also a housing allowance of $500 per week. So I will write there, housing allowance. Now remember, this pay slip that we are doing is only for a week. Housing allowance, and it was 500. It was stated and fixed at 500. So now we have all the earnings, and we call this then gross earnings. Now only add up all the earnings, and you will get 3,600. All right, so there we are done with gross earnings then. So just a reminder that now that we are referring to gross earnings, you will remember in one of the previous videos we spoke about gross remuneration. Well, gross remuneration and gross earnings is then the same thing. All right, so now we will start to do the deductions, but you will see that I will first take pension fund, and then I will take the rest. Now, what is the reason for this? The reason is that if you contribute towards a pension fund, you will pay less tax, because the tax man is saying, look, you are contributing towards your own pension fund. So in other words, you can support yourself when you are old. You won't rely on the government to support you. So therefore, we will give you a tax break. So you can pay less tax because you made contributions to a pension fund. So before we list all the deductions, we will only list the pension fund. You will also see that the pension fund contributions are apart from the employer and apart from the employee. So when we list in this payslip the deductions from the pension fund or medical aid fund, we will only list the part that's made by the employee. We will show the employer separately. So in our calculation, I will now show pension fund, and I will do my calculation on 7.5%, and now you must help me. Remember, a pension fund is only based on your basic salary. Pension fund don't take into account any overtime or allowances. It only takes into account your basic salary. So your pension fund will be calculated at 7.5% of your basic salary, which was the 2,300, and if you do this calculation, you will get 172.50. When I deduct my pension fund, then I will end with taxable income. Remember, I have more deductions, but I need to calculate my taxable income, because from my taxable income, I will calculate my tax. Now, if I deduct that 172.50, then I will have, and you can help me with this calculation, 3,427.50. That is then my taxable income. So on this taxable income of 3,427.50 Namibian dollar, I need to calculate then my tax, and they are saying the tax is 23% of taxable income. All right, so now I will list all my other deductions, and the first one there will be, we are done with the pension fund, so now we will do the medical aid fund. All right, so medical aid, it's not based on a percentage, it's a given amount of 230. I also have my pay as you earn or employee tax or my income tax, and if I calculated that one from my 3,427.50, I take my 23%, I will then get a 788. Now I also have my Social Security Fund, which is paid at 1%, and 1% then will be 23. Now you will also see that Social Security is also based on my basic wage. So in other words, when you look at all these deductions, your Social Security and your pension fund, it's calculated on your basic wage. I'm now done with all my deductions, and now I will have my net earnings or my net remuneration. And this is basically the amount that James will receive in his bank account. If I deduct those amounts then from my taxable income, I will end up with 2386.17 Namibian dollars. This is then the calculation on how to calculate gross earnings, taxable income, and net earnings. We can quickly recap. You start with all your earnings, add up all the earnings, then deduct your pension fund to get your taxable income, then you deduct all the other deductions to get your net earnings. When you deduct your pension fund and your medical aid fund, remember you deduct only the ones made by the employee when you do this calculation, because we will show the employer's part separately. We can quickly look at the employer's part, and that was then the Social Security, the pension fund, and also the medical aid fund. So I will write the employer. We had a pension fund, the pension fund contribution for the employer was the same as for the employee. It was 7.5% of 2,300, and you will remember it was 172.50. There was a social security of $23, and there was a medical aid, and you will remember the medical aid was $230. So this is then all the amounts that the employer will contribute towards these funds on behalf of the employee. This lesson then showed you how to calculate gross earnings or gross remuneration, net earnings, net remuneration, and taxable income. And at the end, we can basically call this then a pay slip.